Hey guys, and welcome to episode number 2 of the Danny Batten MMA show, only on Ace Podcast Nation. I'm your host, Si. Here at Ace Podcast Nation, we've got podcast series and shows on all types of subjects. We've regular series on mental health, conspiracy theories, the serial killer files, films and TV, wrestling, and of course our weekly football show, the Andy Campbell Championship Show, which is out every Wednesday, focused on the Sky Bet Championship news and results, with former Premier League Championship striker Andy Campbell providing the insight and analysis. We've also got interviews and guests on all kinds of stuff, including actors, musicians, wrestlers, fighters, doctors, pretty much anything you can think of which is interesting. We'll talk about it. You can find all the shows on video format, youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation, or available in audio downloads, Google Pods, Apple Pods, iHeartRadio, and all your usual podcasting apps. And we also have a popular series, Unscripted and Uncensored, where you, the people, send in the questions, topics for my guest and I to discuss. These shows are always a lot of fun because you never quite know where they're going to go and what we're going to talk about. We've shows coming up with Welsh boxer Cody Davis, former Premier League referee Jeff Winter, and we previously released unscripted and uncensored shows, including Rodri Giggs, MMA fighter Lee Remedios, Away Day Apparel owner Alan Jones, and of course my co-host for today's show, former Cage Warriors featherweight champion, British MMA legend, Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, buddy.
Hey, Russell. Good to see you again.
Yeah, back again. We are talking some UFC and some MMA. It was pretty good show overall last night, I thought.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. It was an entertaining one. It's always good to see a knockout on the card as well. So we had one of those, didn't we?
Oof, yeah, it was. He certainly was, and I like we're only going to discuss really the main cards. We're going to discuss one of the prelim fights.
Sure.
But I did say I watched a couple of the prelim fights this afternoon, and actually there were some really good fights on that as well. But yeah, so just before we get into everything, I'm just going to quickly do the sponsor for today's show. So today's show is brought to you by Away Day Apparel. Away Day Apparel is a group of casually obsessed football fans looking to bring something different to the wardrobes of like-minded people. With football, music, and weekend carnage high on the agenda, they aim to bring you exclusive products. They're edgy, controversial, but most importantly current, from t-shirts, polos, shorts to hoodies, jackets, and accessories. Stick with them, and they aim to bring you terrace wear that will turn heads and provide cutting edge that we all crave. Okay, so just before we break down the UFC card, Danny, you were at Cage Warriors last weekend with some of your fighters.
Yes.
How was that?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, Jordan was due to fight someone else, but he had a replacement fight. But this guy was experienced, it went down quite interestingly. We had to adapt. A lot of people don't know what really happens in there. They just watch from the outside. But in the very first round, Jordan thought he broke his collarbone. He felt the click as he got taken down, or as he did the takedown, and we knew something was up. He wasn't letting his hands go quite as much as we know that he can and that he'd been doing in training. So it was nice to see that he adapted and he got around it in other ways. So, when it went to the ground, I take it you've seen the fight as well.
Yeah, I've seen sort of highlights of it.
Yeah, whenever he went to his back, he really used these foot hooks, so it would take it off of the upper body, and he did that really well. He done a couple of really good escapes to turn and come out back up on top. So the nice thing about what I saw from Jordan's game was he's shown a little bit of maturity to adapt and change the circumstance. And in that case, he knew something was perhaps wrong up towards his shoulder, and he adapted his game really well to still get through it and still pull off that win. So that guy was no slouch. That guy comes to win every time. I know it's short notice for the guy. But kind of made it a bit difficult for Jordan too, in being that he had to take it at a catch weight because he come off of his weight cut thinking there was no fight going to be. Then this fight did come up, so in a kind of weird conundrum, it ended up being a bit of a short notice affair for Jordan too. But hey, he pulled off a really great decision win, and we're just going to move him on forward now. He's on that Cage Warriors promotion, and that's a great one to be because where they go after they get to the top. Really believe he's going to make it to the top as well.
Yeah, you can see he's a really, really talented guy. And I mean, I always think with short notice fights, sometimes it can be harder for the person who was preparing to fight,
Yeah,
partially because they're preparing to fight someone else, but
yeah,
also because the other person has got nothing to lose.
hmm,
Because, if they lose, they weren't due to fight. They've stepped in at the last minute.
sure,
So I always think that that's quite a dangerous fight to have.
yeah,
Um, So and to pick up an injury early on as well, and then
yeah,
still be able to come through it
yeah.
says a lot. It says a lot about him mentally as well as physically and technically.
Yeah, we know this kid's tough. In one of his previous fights, he went back to the corner saying, "Oh, I felt something go in my hand," and he had broke his hand, and that's why he thought he'd done his collarbone because he said he felt the same type of click that he felt
Mm.
in his hand. He felt that up in his collarbone, thinking, "Oh my goodness, feels like something's gone." And but luckily it wasn't the case. He's having to just do drilling of techniques. So he is a little sore from the fight, but there's no long term issue there with it. So yeah, he's back training and we'll step it up slowly, and we'll be looking for another fight for him.
Excellent. So another one of your fighters, Tom Mearns, has got a fight coming up in Bellator soon, I
That's right.
think, isn't he?
Yeah.
Um,
Jeremy Petley is fighting. Yeah, quite
that should be a good
experienced.
fight for him.
Yeah. I mean, this guy's experienced. I think his record's 12-8-1. So yeah, he's not quite classed as a journeyman. He's more dangerous than that. But this is going to be a good one. I think it's a really good step up after that horrendous injury that Tom Mearns had his other Bellator outing. He's obviously had that fight on Cage Warriors, got the win, had to blow away some cobwebs. His training's been going really, really well. He's looking in good shape. Definitely up for the fight. He's just that type of character. I can't wait to see him get in there and see how he performs. Now he's shaken off a little bit of that rust and got more confident with that arm that was obviously, mentally challenging for anyone to get over. And obviously having issues with his ankle as well, which some people didn't know. But if you saw the fight and saw what he had said in his interview, the ankle was in a bad way, really. I think if the medics knew how bad his ankle was, they probably would have never let him fight. But that just goes to show about his character. He got in there and still pulled off that win.
Yeah, I think anytime you like dislocate a bone or break a bone in that fashion, and let's not beat around the bush, it was brutal and gruesome. I think the biggest part, not the biggest part of the battle, because obviously the biggest part of the battle is like the physical side of it, but a big part of it is coming back mentally.
Yeah,
Because particularly if you get like an early, like a kick or something on it in your first fight back or your first training sessions back, it's going to take a while to get your head around it and get used to fighting again. And
yeah.
he was out for a good few months with that injury, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, he actually had to come completely away from training altogether. We had some issues as well. He had many issues going on in his life with girlfriends that become exes and moving back to his mum's house. And there was a lot of turmoil, not being happy at his work. There was a lot of things, I don't want to get too private about
Yeah.
his things, but this kid had to deal with a lot of stuff and it caused some frictions between me and him as well. And I've known him since he was 15. So we go back, he's kind of like a little brother to me. And to go through how difficult it was the way we did was not a comfortable situation. But we've overcome it all. He's overcome those injuries. We try not to look back on those things and only learn from them. We're just looking to go forward.
Yeah, he looked good in his Cage Warriors fight. So and obviously that fight where he got injured, was that his first Bellator fight?
That's right, it was.
So
Yeah,
that was like obviously a
yeah,
big
yeah.
big fight for him as well. So I would imagine he's itching to get back in that
Sure.
in
Yeah,
that
I think
surroundings.
he would love to fight that guy again. I think because it was. I would say Tom was edging that fight. I was feeling really confident
Yeah,
as
he
the
was.
fight was, playing itself out. I felt confident Tom was going to get that win, and I feel if he faces him again, he'll still win. Actually, on that note of that Mike Akiundo, isn't it? I think I'm pronouncing that name right. I think in terms of Jordan being on that Cage Warriors promotion, I think perhaps that'll be a good one if that's possible to ever happen. Because I know one of the things that you put as a question to me when we was texting and stuff was what next for Jordan. He was down to fight that Monarch, wasn't he? But
Yeah.
Monarch's sort of lower in the rankings now, and I think Jordan's ranked something like the 20th now in the rankings as a featherweight. So I think either Dean Truman, who I think still fights under the Cage Warriors promotion, that perhaps would be a good way to go. Or if you can draw someone like that Mike Akiendo in, that would be great if that match could ever happen. Because I think he's something like 7-1 and Jordan's 5-1.
So that could be a good fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, right. Let's get into the UFC from last night, New York City.
Yeah.
And it was very, very exciting to watch. There wasn't many. Oh, I don't think that. To be fair, I don't think there was any duds. It was they all had various different things which were very interesting about them.
Sure.
We're going to focus mainly on the main card, but I just wanted to touch on the main event of the prelims, which was Corey Anderson versus Johnny Walker.
Yes.
Obviously, Johnny Walker's very highly touted. Even he's been touted by media and people within the UFC as potentially being the one to take John Jones's crown.
Right.
And it just goes to show that in fighting, reputations don't mean anything because he got steamrolled.
Yeah, he did, and this can happen. I mean, once you start getting into those weight brackets, just getting hit by one shot can be a slippery slope of your way to being finished, and that's what we witnessed with that fight. It didn't go very far into the round. He got tagged, and the guy just kept going. This guy tasted blood, and he went at him, and it was a pretty impressive performance, really. The way he just cracking down on him. And,
I thought he was very patient. Corey Anderson, once he floored him, he just waited and let him get back up and tagged him again.
Yeah, it was interesting, what he said when he was interviewed straight after. He was saying that he's seen that he's been cracked by that right hand shot several times, in his previous fights and stuff. So he was waiting to find a home for it, and indeed he did find it. I've got to say, I did feel that Johnny Walker's, he was really letting his hands go wayward to the side, and that's always it's always going to play risks against a powerful dude or in that weight division. And anyone's going to be powerful when they land on the button. The guy got set up, didn't he? He cracked home that right hand shot. It all went from there.
I wondered when I was watching it, and I followed like Johnny Walker over his last couple of fights, and I wondered whether it was almost a case of him believing his own hype a bit, just simply because he had his hands so low, he seemed really lax. And I know he's like, he's got quite a relaxed demeanor about him anyway. I understand that, and that's part of his personality. But he just seemed as if his demeanor to me seemed like he felt like he just needed to turn up and he would do his thing and that would be it. And I just think, like you say, in that weight class, you can't do that because Corey Anderson's very, very experienced and he's dangerous. And I think you could tell by after it had finished, by his reaction that he felt disrespected in the run up to the fight, that everyone had kind of written him off as having no chance.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, he did. I don't know whether I was in full agreement with the way he reacted afterwards.
No.
But obviously, he's just doing exactly what you said, expressing some of the frustrations perhaps leading up to this. And I absolutely agree with you. I even said as I was watching it, I'm like, it looks like he's being a bit overconfident. I don't like his hands being down by his side like that as we was watching the fights. And I just didn't like it from the get-go. And it played out exactly to my worries for him. The hands were low. It put too confident.
I mean, no disrespect. He's fought Roundtree, Ledet, Shirkinov, but Corey Anderson is, I think, the first real challenge for him in UFC. He's like a step above those other three. That's not to say they were sort of walkovers by any means, but Corey Anderson, like we say, is a very experienced fighter. He's a very dangerous fighter. And also he's got no fear he had no fear over Johnny Walker's tools and striking.
Sure.
He was focused on his game plan, and he certainly had, he put his game plan to perfect use. And obviously he's beaten, he took Glover Teixeira, to the distance.
Yeah.
You know, they're strong fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think UFC, when they booked this fight, were expecting or wanting Johnny Walker to lose here, because I
Well,
feel
no,
like they were
there was
building him.
yeah, there was building someone up. But if you actually think, Johnny Walker hasn't had much cage time. He'd been finishing people quite quickly. And so when that can happen, I think it's easy for the fighter to then not really plan a strategy as he goes into fights, banking on that he's going to get some kind of early finish as soon as the opportunity arises. But the opportunity was flipped on its head and put on him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's so important that fighters stay true to some form of strategy. I mean, maybe he had one. We can only say on guessing terms, but yeah, I feel like he went in there with no real game plan other than he was expecting to land one of those big shots and do what was done to him. Yeah.
Yeah, I always wondered. I mean, you'd know more than me, obviously. Is that when you have a fighter who's on a streak where they're finishing fights within a minute or two,
Yeah.
and that's his first 3 fights in UFC. I think none have gone the distance. They've all been KOs or TKOs in short amount of time.
Yeah.
So I do wonder whether those types of fighters on those streaks stop having a game plan for their opponent because they're so confident that they're going to get that big shot, or that in his case he's throwing quite elaborate shots as well, like high kicks and spin kicks and this type of thing. So I wonder whether hopefully he won't fade away now, and he'll come back stronger, and he'll go away and work hard, and because he's clearly got talent. So I'd like to see him come back.
Yeah. He's got an interesting body composition, being as tall as he is. And he's still a young man. So, yeah, as long as he's got a good team around him and he stays smart with his approach to the fight game, he'll learn from this and he'll start to strategize a little bit more and hopefully give his opponents a little bit more respect. Because that was, I think, part of the equation of why he lost, that night. So.
Yeah, and it was certainly why Corey Anderson was so frustrated afterwards. You could see that, he was almost pushing the referee out the way, wasn't he? Because he really wanted to say his piece. But I mean, I suppose he's a professional. He's got a fairly good record. He's been, he's been fought some decent guys. He's been in the UFC for a while.
Yeah.
And maybe he felt that he was being written off a bit too easily, and he proved it as well. That's not
He's back really in the mix and relevant now. So it'll be interesting to see who they match him up with next and see what path they want to take with him now.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to find someone for John Jones. And I mean, realistically, I suppose Corey Anderson's there. There's the other guy, and I can't remember his name now off the top of my head. I was thinking about him earlier, and I can't remember his name. But talking of guys who've put themselves right back in the mix, the first fight on the main card was number 10 ranked Kevin Lee versus number 11 ranked Gregor Gillespie.
Yes.
And wow, I really, really enjoyed Kevin Lee in this fight because I felt like this is the best I've seen him since the Tony Ferguson fight, where he had a few injury issues after that, and he hasn't looked the same. This looked like the Kevin Lee of old, when everyone thought he was going to be the guy.
Yeah, I liked it. I was impressed as well. Looked really, really sharp. He lowered his base a little bit as well. He come out, really low, and I observed that straight away. And obviously, because this Gillespie's a very good wrestler. But he sunk really low, but he was still finding really good range with his shots. And I think he felt out a little bit of a shoot on the other guy's leg as well, just to give him other things to think about. I just thought it was just a great all-round performance. I haven't seen him look that sharp and composed. I think sometimes he's a little bit uneconomical with his energy levels and puts a lot in areas where he didn't need to, but he was just holding back and strategizing every element of his combinations. And I really feel like he set him up with that little combination that led to the demise of Gillespie. It was beautiful to see.
Yeah, and I mean, like you just mentioned there with Gillespie, he is a top level wrestler. He, I think I was reading that the only reason he's basically not in the Olympic team or wasn't in the Olympic team is because the guy in front of him is so good.
Right.
He's I forget he's like a Division One NCCA or whatever NCA wrestler. It's really, really, really would have been easy for with Kevin Lee being in the kind of form that he's been in since that Ferguson fight.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have been surprised to see him get taken down and just wrestled and dominated by Gregor Gillespie because of his how good his wrestling is and because how Kevin Lee had looked in the past few fights. And you're right. He set him up with he was attacking him with the jab and the combinations, and then he hits Gillespie with a head kick, and Gillespie goes stiff as a board, and he was gone.
Gillespie he was overusing his jab. When you watch it, he kept pumping at that jab. It was kind of effective at first, but he just kept doing it and kept doing it. And the thing is, when he was doing that, his right hand was drifting down doing the jab, because as he kept using it so often, Kevin Lee was getting accustomed to it range wise, and so Gillespie would have had to stretch it that little bit more. When you start to stretch your jab like that, you have to balance yourself because you start leaning a little. He wasn't bringing his feet in with it, because he was leaning a little bit. It was making that hand drop a little bit, and then that become a reaction. If you look back in the fight and slow everything down, that hand come down quite regular defensively as well as when he was attacking. And I think he made a little play off that. The guy done a jab, he slipped it, he threw a right hand over, and then come up with that left lead kick. And it was a lovely combination. I was really impressed.
Yeah, it was real good. I heard you, or you said, sorry, get my words all muddled up. You said at the start, when we started this fight, about Kevin Lee had a very low, like low center of gravity, low stance from the very outset. What would be the benefits for him for that? Like, why would he choose to do that?
I mean, he's doing it so that he's setting his hips back, so the body lock's going to be hard to attain for one. So the other guy's going to have to shoot for that lead leg. And when you've got your hips back like that and you strip back that lead leg, you're going to have a real hard sprawl if he tries to enter in fully with that shoot. He did try to shoot in for Kevin Lee's leg, which he did slip it back if you have a look, and it just wasn't there. And then the combinations that Kevin Lee was throwing, he was throwing every now and then straight rights to the body. And of course, if someone's like a wrestler trying to look to drop levels and try and come in to try and take those hips or that lead leg, he's going to have to go through the fact that he could be throwing that right straight to the body. I mean, that was an absolute good call to go low down like that. It wouldn't have perhaps been a good strategy if this guy was a wrestler and also a really dangerous striker. Then coming down, because you do take away from yourself a little bit of footwork skill being so low. But I think he knew he would have it on the feet, and he could get away with going that little bit lower and still be effective with his striking. And he absolutely showed that. He really, really did. An absolute good call, a great prep from the team, because he's changed team, hasn't he?
Yes, yeah.
So with the new team, and I would say they're a little bit more intelligent in terms of camp prep and strategy. But of course, as much as you can have a good camp prep and a good strategy from the camp, the fighter's still got to go out there and play it out. And it was great to see that that he did that.
Yeah, definitely. With the kick which finished it, do you think he was setting him up for that kick, or do you think that he noticed it within the fight that Gillespie was dropping his right hand where he was stretching from the jab and was looking for it from there, or do you think he was looking to set it up as part of a game plan from beforehand?
No, I don't think it was a game. I think initially the game plan with dropping his stance and things like that was all part of the pre-prep. But I think that was something that would have been, brought out to attention by the cornermen and stuff like that. I think they would have adapted their strategy on the job as the fight was playing out. It seemed. I mean, come on, with striking, it's a little bit hard. You can't ever predict anything's going to land. You throw things out there and have to put a little bit of hope on it, but you put your highest percentages on it by seeing a fault in their guard. And this guy was just letting that right hand of his, that rear hand of his, go wayward a little bit. And you'd have to think that they spotted that and thought, well, let's throw that kick up there in the combination. The guy's either going to have a reaction quick enough to do something about it as it comes up, or he's not. And in this case, he just did not. I'm just watching it play out now. That the right hand was well low. It was just nice. We all like to see him knock out, don't we? But we just love to see it set up in a combination like that. One of my students done a very, very similar combination. Just to go back to what we were saying, this was Richard Mearns, Tom Mearns' brother. He won with a head kick in a very similar fashion. And then we had a problem with him in his other fights. He ended up having a run of 2 losses because he kept hunting for the same kick. So a little bit of an experience there with my student that, he was hunting for. Let's hope that Kevin Lee don't just keep hunting for that kick now in other fights, and let's hope that he carries through a strategy for each opponent, whoever that may be.
Yeah, it must be difficult in some ways for all fighters, is when you find something which gets you that big KO to not go searching for it.
Yeah.
In the following fights, because it's been so effective for you, in that fight. And obviously for Kevin Lee, I think he was under pressure coming into this fight to get back to where he was. Obviously the change of team has helped. You can see that just by his whole fight strategy, and the way he performed tonight was as good as he's looked in a very long time. And he's such an exciting fighter and such a talented fighter that if he can go on a bit of a streak, you wouldn't be surprised to see him with some gold, anytime soon, really.
Yeah. I mean, he's making himself relevant again. And I think there were doubts to whether he was going to drift out because, he just wasn't performing well, consecutively. But this was a great performance. I would like to see how he performs again to have a little bit more confidence on, is he ever going to become a legit contender again? But based on that, and based that he performs well again, I certainly think he could be contending again to make waves in that division.
Who would you match him up against now, off the top of your head?
Oh my goodness. Who would you play him up against? That's a little bit of a difficult one.
It's difficult, isn't it, off the top of your head? I've stitched you up a bit there.
I'd have to have a proper look at that that top 10 ranking and have a little look in there. Yeah, because I don't want them jumping him up too crazy high again. This guy's just trying to get himself back confident. So, I think he's ranked number 10?
Yeah, he's number 10, and Gillespie was number 11.
So maybe try and give him someone who's ranked 7 and 8. I'm not too sure who that is off the top of my head. I haven't got those listed.
Yeah, I was just gonna have a quick look then. He's was he lightweight or light heavyweight?
Yeah, lightweight.
Lightweight. Yeah. So it's such a division, isn't it? That is just so deep, that division.
Yeah.
So I'll just have a quick look. Seeing as I stitched you up with the question, I feel like I should list off a couple of names.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. It's like you don't want to shoot him up, too quickly. Don't want to give him someone like Khabib or something like that. You give him someone just above. Obviously, you got McGregor who wants to come back.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I did say to you on the other podcast. One of the questions was, what do I think from McGregor? And I would have thought, Kevin Lee versus McGregor would have been a great fight because McGregor's obviously had some bruises to contend with his results lately, and so had Kevin Lee. I think that would have been a great matchup. Kevin Lee's got the power in his hands to match Conor McGregor in terms of still being dangerous on the feet. And there's wrestling aspects as well. And to me, both of them have had cardio issues in some of their bouts that have gone into the rounds. So that would have been interesting. I think it just would have been a well-matched affair. And that could still be a legit fight to put on. Why not? I think that would be a good one for the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so you've got just above him is Edson Barbosa, Ally Quinter, Dan Hooker, Paul Felder, Cerrone, Justin Gaethje, and then McGregor.
I mean, a lot of those guys that all had some losses that need to prove themselves. He's on the way up. Some of them are perhaps knocking themselves, slipping down a little bit. Yeah, any of those would be great. They're all great matchups for it, to be honest. And
I think Dan Hooker would be a good one. I quite fancy that.
Yeah, that would be a good one to watch. But I would like to see perhaps if they build Kevin Lee up again another fight and get Dan Hooker another fight, and if they're both still winning, then I think that would be a really good one. But yeah. I mean, that Dan Hooker we've said last time. I'd like.
Looks special.
if he performs really good against a high ranked guy, and then we're going to know this guy's an absolute real deal. But he certainly appears to be.
He does, yeah. He looks special. But
Yes.
if you'd asked me that a week ago about Johnny Walker, I would have probably said, yeah, he looks special.
Yeah.
And in the fight game, well, you know
Yeah.
better than I do.
Sure.
You've got to be on the ball and on your game every
Yes.
fight, no
Yeah.
matter who you're fighting.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the big boys, the heavyweights.
Yeah.
Number 5 ranked Derek Lewis versus number 8 Blagoy Ivanov.
Yes.
This was brutal.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed this fight. Some of the heavier weight guys are a bit ploddy, and some people can be, find it a little bit more boring because you don't always get your full spectrum of MMA skill sets being displayed. It's technically most beautiful, but I think Derek Lewis, when he goes on his little rampage, it gets you up out your seat and it gets exciting for a little bit, and you always wait for those moments, maybe a little bit. Maybe we don't look at it too technically, but every time he went on his little rampages with his uppercuts and that, if he landed any of them clean, it was going to take the guy's head clean off. Never managed, unfortunately, to land any of them super, super clean. But yeah, it was just great from the get-go. It was always going to be exciting. I was a little bit surprised how tentative they both were in the very first round. The other guy was backing off a little bit, and Derek just wasn't seeming to come forward explosively. Maybe just the range didn't feel right for them both, but they're big dudes. They've got to come in at the right time, I guess. I really enjoyed it. It got me up out my seat a couple of times.
Yeah, it was. It's very. Derek Lewis is just one of those guys, and he is where, like, obviously he's beaten some big names. He beat Ngannou, who was
Yes,
on a massive streak,
that's right, he was.
and he's one of those guys where he just hits these big shots. But I thought Ivanov didn't. He was no slouch. He had a couple of good shots, I think he had a couple of trips,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
he
this
had a
guy.
lovely, lovely like double wrist lock. I'm sure it's not called that in MMA, but in wrestling, like a double wrist lock while he was on the floor. And just for a
Yes,
split second, I thought he had him, and I thought he was going to have to tap, but
yeah,
he
he was.
changed the angle, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he was technically really flawed in his approach to it, and the reason behind that was the position of the guy's elbow. It's just a Kimura, a figure of four lock that he had on the arm, and he had the elbow way, way too high. And the thing is, when the elbow's high, not only do they have flexibility in the arm to resist the submission, but you're also coming off the top of the body, and you
Yeah.
lose control of the hips and the torso. And Derek rightly span out. And again, it instantly got really exciting because this guy has got fantastic judo. I think he was on the Olympic team, wasn't he, for his country?
Okay.
So I knew that there's possibly going to be some big takedowns on throws and some kind of ground aspects. But his submission was not, or his submission attempts were just not clinical or tight enough. He just weren't quite executing them properly. And when you make a mistake in executing a submission such as that, where it's pinning the side control as well as trying to go for the submission, he allowed that elbow to go high, so the submission wasn't going to quite be there, and it meant he was always going to lose control of the body. And Derek sensed the air, around his torso, and knew he could just spin out each time. He spun out twice from that submission attempt.
Yeah, and the final time where he got to his feet,
Yeah,
you could see it was almost it kind of you could see the moment it dawned on him that he had enough room to spin out,
yeah,
and he exploded onto his feet. But I mean, from Ivanov's point of view, it's a shame because at one point he had the position to really, execute
yeah,
the submission correctly, and he probably would have
yes,
got the tap because
yeah,
obviously, like I'm not an expert in either wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu, or anything in
yeah,
submissions, but like just even I can tell by the angle that the arm is at, if he gets that technically correct, you're
yeah,
going to have to tap because your arm's going to break or your wrist's going to break. So
yeah, yeah.
I felt like that was probably his best chance of winning or finishing the fight.
Mm-hmm.
At any point, I didn't really feel like Ivanov got closer. He had a few good shots, but I
Yeah,
felt like that was the time where, and like you said, it got really exciting. And I felt like that was the time where he could have perhaps finish Lewis.
Yeah.
But
I actually think the time that he was most dangerous was when he's sitting up it's like a double wrist guillotine choke. To an untrained eye, perhaps it wouldn't be aware of it. It happened really at the end of a round. And I knew that was going in, and Derek wasn't responding in the correct way to do anything about defending it. He was literally down on his knees, and this guy was prepping it up, but he just ran out of time. To me, that was much closer to being putting the fight away than any of those arm submissions he was attempting. I'm not saying this guy's any slouch on the ground. I'm sure he's a handful. I'm sure he'd deal with me on the ground, being the size, etc. But yeah, I just think that submission that he went for ended up being the reason why he lost control of Derek. And maybe it would have been better for him just to keep control, keep smothering him, and just work some ground and pound from there.
Yeah.
And just take those rounds. But when it was on the feet, I think he was losing those rounds because of the explosiveness and the visual that Derek was putting on him with those uppercuts and the knees. The knees really impressed me with Derek. But one thing I didn't like about Derek's game was his kicks. I didn't like those. Do
you think they come? I thought they like come across as a bit almost sloppy, like a little bit, like a bit soft and a bit lazy.
Yeah,
but obviously that's not his bread and butter. If you want. No,
he's probably feeling out something that he's been playing around with, maybe in the gym. But it didn't look too good. He was he looked like he didn't know whether he wanted to throw it or not. Sometimes it's strange.
It was like he was caught in two minds, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To go. It was the second round. I felt like that was Ivanov's best round, and I actually thought that he probably won that round.
Yeah.
And it was right at the end where he had that choke, which you were referring to.
Yeah.
But I think you're right in that. Lewis was dominating the striking battles, and in the second round, Ivanov went for some leg trips and kicks to try and break that up and do something different. And when he did get him to the ground, he looked a little bit more dangerous without really looking like he was gonna sort of dominate him on the ground. Like you said, he didn't really go for like the ground and pound or anything like that. But he really enjoyable fight, I gotta say.
Yeah, it was. I just think Ivanov was not doing anything regards trying to do some damage. Don't come out with not a mark on his face, I don't think. I think had he tried to use those top positions to get some ground and pound off before doing the submission attempts, he could have had it go his way. Something that I always teach my students regards doing their takedown. I always say, do the takedown, stabilize position first so you can maintain it. Then look to do some ground and pound. It keeps both the crowd happy and get some scoring for the takedown. If you do a takedown, don't do nothing with a scramble back up, you're not really going to get much of a score. It's as good as throwing an aggressive strike that's out of range. You've got to do something with it. So when you take someone down, consolidate position, get some ground and pound off so it looks like you're trying to do rack up some kind of points and damage, and then perhaps try and go for the submission.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so Lewis won by split decision.
Yes.
I think. Do you think that was right? Split decision?
Yeah, I did. For the fact that he'd done the damage. It looked like he was really trying to put the fight away. And I know Ivanov was trying to put the fight away in terms of the submission, but it was very, very weak attempt because I know it was really flawed. He really had an opportunity there. Derek looked like he didn't really know how to defend it. He was kind of staying there, allowing him to set up that 2-on-1 on his arm with no real fight. All he did was keep that elbow high, and whether he'd done that even intentionally or not is hard to know because I don't know what kind of level his ground really truly is. But Ivanov was not trying to put that elbow low. He was allowing it to be high, and he was trying to force it through, and he took his body weight off and lost control. And I think, just because of that one thing, I think that led to him letting those rounds slip away a little bit. But definitely, he was close. I think it was just there for the taking on anyone who played the slightly bit of strategy. But it wasn't a pretty fight, but entertaining nevertheless.
Yeah, it was very entertaining. I think it could have. I think it's one of those fights afterwards that both fighters will feel like they could have won or finished. Could have finished. Like you said, like we said, the Ivanov could have won via submission if he had been a bit more technically correct and a bit more clinical. And Lewis could have been a bit more, maybe a bit more aggressive with his strikes and a bit more early on, found his range a bit sooner, and
Sure.
yeah.
I think with Derek Lewis, I feel it's always an issue with the cardio. I mean, this happens with some of the big guys, right? You know, he does look dangerous, but he's looking dangerous maybe once or twice for about 5-10 seconds of any one round, and you know, sometimes that's not going to be enough for him. It would be a nice to see him address more the cardio aspects and the strength and conditioning aspects. I'm sure he's strong, but in terms of, you know, being strong and being able to actually be functional with that strength by having the cardio to release that big frame of his in any kind of technical way. So yeah, let's see him get fitter, which I think I've heard that he's camp are really trying to focus on. So maybe we'll see him becoming more cardio orientated in the next few fights and dangerous more often per round, and that would make a very dangerous Derek Lewis.
Absolutely, because how often do you see him over the years have a big flurry at the start of a fight,
Yeah,
and then look completely gassed out for the rest of the fight?
yeah,
You know, he's seen it time and time again. But
that's right.
I thought in this fight he looked dangerous in each round
Yeah,
at certain points,
yeah,
rather than going all out in the first round and then not doing much in the latter rounds. I thought he did
yeah.
look. He had his moments in each round.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised at the beginning of the rounds. You know, Evanoff was really backing off, and he looked kind of intimidated a little bit, even though nothing was really coming forth towards him at the beginning. I thought perhaps, you know, I would have liked to have seen Derek actually do what he would done of old and go for it a little bit in that first round, because definitely Evanoff looked really tentative, and I think he could have done something a little bit more creative and active at the beginning. But then again, you know, if he perhaps got active so early on, maybe he wouldn't have got to the finish line with regards to that cardio of his.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
So next up, we had number 9 ranked Stephen Thompson versus number 14 ranked Vincent Luque. This was my favourite fight of the night, I gotta say.
And you know what? Mine too. And before this fight come up, once we see them walking out and stuff, I was saying, hey, this Luca's really special. You know, he's good, and he's got that press close fitness style as well. You know, his kid's fit, tenacious, and he'll come forward with that really tight garden form. I really thought, oh, he could have the style to really, really crowd Stephen Thompson's game. But hey, Stephen Thompson, this guy's obviously experienced, obviously an incredible striker. He adapted and changed as the rounds went on. And this was an awesome one of his best performances I've seen today. And he definitely becomes relevant again. First round was great though. You know, that Luque was really pressing Thompson back, and I was thinking this is how the pattern of the fight was going to go. You know, he'd done some flurries on Thompson, didn't he? Really got him against the fence, made him look really uncomfortable. And you know, Thompson has his little bit of successes in that first round. You know, he was trying to be rangy, but Luque had that really good strategy of attacking Thompson's lead leg, didn't he? Nothing too consequential, but it looked like it was interfering with the range prep for Thompson. And I thought this was a really great strategy. And the first round, I would say, went to Luque. And yeah, that was a good first round for him.
Yeah, with Thompson, I always think it's really difficult for fighters to target his front leg because he switches his stance so often.
Yeah.
And he's so dangerous with those kicks that obviously the fighters want to target his legs because they want to try and take out the power of his kicks.
Yeah.
But he just switches his stance, and he's so tall that his range is superb. I thought this was the best Stephen Thompson I've seen since the first Woodley fight.
Yeah, great.
I thought he put on a real clinic. I tell you what, Luque can take a shot.
Oh,
Jeez.
my goodness. Yeah. I mean, these kids are tough, but there's another reason, you know, why he could take that, and that was his form was very, very good and very, very tight. Yes, Thompson was getting through with some of those shots clean onto his face, but his chin was well tucked. Yeah, his face was getting damaged up, but they were luckily for him what landed on his chin. You know, he really did keep a tight form, and that was impressive under the barrage that he took in round 2 and 3. So, you know, after that first round, you know, I was thinking that this pattern was going to be set, and Thompson just come out much sharper, using his hands a whole lot more. Of course, we know Thompson as being predominantly a kicker with some sharp hands, but he really turned up his boxing skills, and that it was impressive. He kept landing that left cross hand, didn't he? It just kept going down the pipe right through his guard. And then we started seeing Luque drift back a little bit. It was obviously beginning to hurt him. And I liked him. That was another fight where I was getting up out of my seat a little bit, like, oh, this fight is really on.
Yeah, Stephen Thompson is an exciting fighter to watch because he does so many. He didn't do it as much in this fight, but usually he's doing all these different types of kicks, and he did a few. I thought. So tell me, why is Stephen Thompson so awkward for his opponents? Other than the switching of stances.
It's not only the switch of stance; it's actually what his stance is, which is very side on, and they become very centre line dominant. And when they're using that bouncing game, it's very, very hard to read your own range with. So there's both very, very different strikers. Luque's very, very K1 orientated. He has very, very formal footwork. He steps through it bit by bit. He shuffles forward, whereas Thompson will skip in and jump in. So their attacking approaches were very, very opposite end. But when someone's side on like that, I come from a taekwondo background, and me and my brother, compete at a reasonable level at it. And when you come up against someone leggy and long like that, who was to the side and centre line dominant like that, it's a real worry to come forward, because those side kicks, they're really powerful, and those back kicks are really powerful. You only ever take one to the stomach, and if that don't finish and drop you and make it game over, it makes you feel that anything else, anything but attack will knock you down again. And I think this is what makes him so effective, is the fact that it is centre line dominant. You've got to try and find your way around him. It's almost like you've got to go through some kind of flack to get at him. It's awkward. It's very awkward facing someone like this.
What's more difficult to read as an opponent? So if you've got someone like Thompson who skips in, so if you're looking for like that trigger movement for a kick or a punch, what's more difficult to read? Someone who sort of skips in like Thompson, or someone who's a bit more sort of fixed like Luque, who's shuffling?
Yeah, I mean, they both come with different types of pressure. And like with someone like Luque, if he starts getting his way with you, it's just going to feel like he's on you and gives you no rest. He's also like always invading your space, and that's really not a comfortable thing. You just feel like he's just always going to be there. He's stepping forward, and you've always got to work to keep him away. That's the kind of stylist that Luque has. But Thompson's one of those ones that you'd feel unsafe even when he's out of range. Because whenever he chooses to, he seems to vanish from one location. Suddenly he's in your location throwing shots. It's that different type of awkwardness. I mean, all of it results in that you're going to get hit, but it's the sense that you get from these two different stylists when you spar against them. One of them, they come in and you expect to be hit, and you try and cover up, and it's pressure orientated like Luque. And the other one is you think you're safe, and suddenly getting hit with something that you don't see, which is what was happening to Luque. And then that in turns unnerving. It makes you fight very, very tense.
Yeah, I mean, they went into round 3, 1 round apiece. But Thompson had looked particularly impressive in the second round.
Yeah.
And what he does very well is he changes the angles of where he's coming from.
Yeah.
He never seems to be coming, or the attacks never seem to be coming from in front of his opponent. He seems to, like you say, take that skip slightly to the side or to the left, and because he can go with either foot, he does that weird. He does like a weird kick where he kicks off his front foot almost.
Yeah.
So it looks like it would be completely unexpected.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if someone's throwing like a high kick, their weight is off their power is off their base leg, isn't it? And he seems to have this weird technique where he does it for like his weight's on his other leg. It's strange.
If you notice from the first round, which obviously didn't go his way, we'd agree that the second round did go his way. He started really stepping up the pace with the hands and started getting success. Then in that third round, he started opening up with all these diverse kicks, and he would do a centre line dominant kick, then do a round kick up high, say to the head. He just was throwing so many different angles and so many different strikes that Luque didn't know what was going to come, where, and when. and that could become more and more apparent because he was getting kicked off balance as well. Even when he was blocking a kick, he didn't know what type of kick he was blocking. He wasn't prepping his balance for the impact of the kick, and it was bowling him over. It was great. I mean, that's proper high level striking in terms of that traditional striking style. It was fantastic. I'm just so pleased that I see him still be relevant because I've always been a bit of a fan of watching his style. I like seeing these more traditional stylists have their successes in there. It was always good to see. There's always a potential highlight reel there. I mean, do you see some of those kicks that he was pulling off?
Yeah.
I mean, if any of those hit home clean, that would have been, a good night shot.
Yeah, he did. I think it was the second round. He did that wheel kick, which was really, really close to landing. And like you say, you connect with one of those, and because he's such a high level kickboxer or taekwondo with his feet, he connects with one of those clean, and this, like you say, it's game over.
Yeah.
So obviously Thompson won the official decision by unanimous decision. Sorry. The right thing, that was right. 29-28.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no two ways about it. He won the second and third round very, very clearly.
Yeah, I had it sort of around 29-28 myself, but the judges actually scored it. Two of them scored it 30-26.
Yeah, because
I thought it was a bit harsh on Luque.
Yeah, you say that, but that's because of these knockdowns. They were consequential. They knocked him, but I think it was more due to that fact. It was so dominant. It was a knockdown aspect that I think scored it that way, and I wouldn't have disagreed with that. I would agree with that personally myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take your word over mine, Nick. It's just I just do it for fun as I'm watching it. But so next up was the return of Darren Till after a couple of losses versus Kelvin Gastelum, which is no easy fight for him coming off two losses.
Yeah.
Very interesting fight.
Absolutely was interesting. I was really excited to watch this one, and you got to give it to Gastelum. I mean, he's not big for the division, is he? He's 5'9". He's not the most muscled of dudes, but he just seems to manage to always make good representation of himself in there. But this one, it didn't go down how I thought it was going to go. I really thought Gastelum was going to be able to, really make in close fighting of it. But Till showed really, really great strategy. He crowded his work. He was getting a lot of outside success, wasn't he, Till? And every time Gastelum tried to make it an in-pocket affair, which is where I think he's really effective, he clinched him up and just didn't allow him to get off. And this became the theme of the fight. I think Gastelum could have definitely done a lot better than he did. Not in terms of his striking, because he had a good game plan put against him from the Till camp. And having himself smothered, but he was going for the clinch quite a lot, and he was getting Till up against the fence, but he did no leg-on-leg attacks. And when I say leg-on-leg attacks, I don't mean knees to the legs or kicks to the legs in that clinch. I mean dragging the leg out from the outside or from the inside, and I would have preferred from the outside. If I was in his corner, that's what I would have been calling for. He had great hip control with his arms. He had Till up against the fence, and Till was not making everything correct in terms of his leg positioning for the outside leg trip. His knee was bent, his knee was facing forward. He could have easily got a step behind that leg and had an attempt to drag it out and put him down and start pinching these rounds with takedowns. But he kept on, lingering around in there, throwing a few knees that weren't really that consequential, and looking to go maybe with his arms down to the legs on Till, which was allowing Till to explode out. So definitely it was a little lack of wrestling dexterity in Gastelum's game, I think led to him being a little bit lost and flustered strategically, because he was forced to strike, but his striking game was not able to get off because of that smother style that Till was putting upon him. It was impressive.
Yeah. Do you think that Gastelum almost was reliant? He wanted to get inside to hit those strikes.
Yeah.
But Till was obviously stopping him, like you said, by smothering it and clinching him up. But do you think that he should have maybe changed from he almost seemed too keen to do that all the time rather than varying it up a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like he had no other strategy to bring to
Yeah.
the table. I think he thought it was going to go down a certain way, as did I. I thought it was going to be a great striking affair. I thought it was going to be a case of Till trying to stay rangy and stay out of the pocket, and Gastelum trying to enforce the pocket. And I think they was going to have their own successes in each of those ways. But Till, whether he planned to do it that way or it's just become a pattern of the fight, every time Gastelum did get into his range, he was tying him up. And even though Till was not considered a great wrestler, he did really well defending the attempts by Gastelum. Although I didn't rate the attempts as anything too high against the fence, I think there was better work to be done by Gastelum. Yeah, he did what he needed to do to stay on the feet predominantly. I mean, I know Gastelum in the last round did get some takedowns, but couldn't keep him down. It was kind of like a little bit too little, too late for him. Maybe if he tried to hit those kind of takedowns from the get-go, it would have been better. But he kept trying to do the same strategy of trying to get in close, trying to let off his hands, which is what he's always been comfortable to do. But he just didn't change up, did he?
No, and until was almost, well, he was expecting it obviously beforehand, but it became this pattern of he would, every time Gastelum would try and do it, Till would tie him up,
Yeah,
and it just kept on going. It was interesting listening to Darren Till speak afterwards, not
yeah,
so much in the cage, but I saw an interview with him, where they do the ones afterwards
sure.
backstage, and he said that he was very nervous coming into the fight. He was scared. He said he
Yeah,
had contemplated faking an injury to get
mm,
out of the fight,
right.
which I think says a lot about the impact the losses have had on him
Yeah,
mentally, because you don't hear many fighters coming out and being that honest
yeah,
about where their heads at. So that, I think, that explains perhaps why we didn't get the fight that we expected
mm,
beforehand, with sort of Till working the strikes from slightly more distance, and Gastelum trying to get in the pocket, like you said. Um, but I thought Till, he comfortably won the fight. I thought.
yeah,
I didn't think Gastelum really looked at any point as if he was troubling him, should we
no,
say? Um, I think he could have, if, like you said, if he had done some better work against the cage, if he had maybe varied up a bit.
yeah,
Um, but I thought Till managed the fight very well after the first couple of minutes, where he looked a bit nervous,
yeah,
which obviously it was explained afterwards by him. Um, Once he got through that first round, he seemed to settle,
mm,
and once he settled, he didn't look like it was going any other way, and I thought he
yeah.
comfortably won.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Look, if Gaston had just had a little bit better takedown game and maybe got some takedowns into the mix of those rounds, it would have forced Till to strike to be more active in the striking, opening up the pocket opportunities for Gastelum. But it didn't happen that way. Till could just carry on hit and smother, and he was hitting him at range. As soon as it come in close, regards Gastelum coming in, he just tied him up, spoiled him, and that become the pattern of the fight. Okay, Gastelum changed it up a little bit towards the real end part of that third round, but he was just a little bit, too little, too late. He just couldn't work enough from there to make an impact on that round.
Yeah, I was just looking for my paper. I think I scored this one 30-27 to Till,
Yeah,
but it was actually given as a split
I
decision,
know, a little bit
which I thought
surprised.
was
Yeah, a little bit
strange.
surprised at that. Yeah,
Can you
I really
explain?
was.
Can you explain it though?
The
Perhaps
only
why?
conclusion, yeah, the only conclusion I can have of that was, there wasn't loads of strikes landing, but the ones that were landing were, for my side of things, seemed to be coming from Till. None of them hugely consequential, although he marked up Gastelum's leg. But I think where the judges perhaps saw that was the fact that maybe Till had his back up against the fence for
Okay.
portions of the round. He wasn't trying to he wasn't perhaps putting enough effort into having Gastelum there and then exploding off the fence. He was exploding off the fence back at Andy Open after being against the fence for some time. That's the only conclusion I can have. But you know what it's like with these judges. Sometimes they have a scratch in their heads. Yeah, I was left
Yes,
scratching
they
my head on
do.
that one. I'm a little bit surprised it was a split decision likewise. But that's the only conclusion I can have was that Gastelum had him with his back up against the fence.
Yeah, it's one of those where you just kind of scratching your head. They mentioned on commentary. I don't know if it was in this fight. I think it was in one of the other fights, that they'd like to see the scores be up on the screen in between rounds, and
Yeah.
you know what the scores are going into each round.
Yeah.
And what what each judge is scoring and whatnot, because you never hear from the judges afterwards, so you never get an explanation of why they've scored in the way they've scored.
Yeah.
So do fighters and camps get that explanation or anything afterwards?
Not really. No, we're always
So
left
there's no way
guessing.
to analyze it.
No, we're always left frustrated.
That's bizarre, isn't it?
Look, the referees, they're really in the firing line there. Every decision they make is there for all to see. They're knowing people see who these refs are, and so their reps always on the line to make good decisions. But they're humans, and not all the time they make good ones, but they do it from the best of their ability, I'm sure. But mistakes are made, and the better the ref, the less mistakes are made. But with the judges, they're kind of like not seen, and I think they should be perhaps held a little bit more accountable. Who are they? What are their credentials? I would want to know a little bit about that a little bit more. Yeah, and certainly the reasons why they scored it the way they do. I think they should be put under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, and I think from a fight camp point of view, if these days with sports science and all this type of thing with all sports, is analysis and video and everything is used, isn't it, to analyze fights and break them down, and like any sport. So when you're going through things with your fighters afterwards to what went right, what went wrong, it would be handy if you've had a fight go to decision, to know, this judge has scored it this way because you can kind of try and address that in the future fights.
Yeah, sure.
But they're not held accountable, or they're not. It's even if they don't make them public, on TV, but just they send like a thing through to the fight camps to say, this judge scored the fight like this because of this.
Yeah.
So at least from an analysis point of view going forward. But
it's very annoying. It is frustrating, and I mean these judges have a lot of power in their hands. They make bad judgment. These young athletes that are really making a lot of sacrifices to try and create the successes that are needed to become financially sound in the sport, which is predominantly what a lot of these fighters are doing, right? And they're having an impact through their bad decision making on judging these fights. So I'd want to know what their credentials are to score it. For me, it always would make natural sense that judges are always people who have been in the fight game, and it's no good having a previous boxing guy judge a wrestling match. There's no point having a pure wrestler judge a boxing match. So what are these? Are these guys just proficient in just one discipline and don't know how to judge the other aspects of these MMA matches? Are they only judging it because they only know wrestling? Are they only judging it because they only know boxing? I think maybe that's what's happening somewhere down the line. I mean, this is only a presumption because it's no one really knows much about these judges, right?
Do you ever do the fighters meet the judges like during the events and the evenings or anything? Nothing.
No, I mean, on the smaller shows, you get to know they are. I mean, we do the shows that are just national. I quite often know a lot of the people who are doing the judging and the commentating.
But like at a Cage Warriors or a UFC and Bellator, you don't know them.
No, but UFCs and Bellators and things like that. No, you're not rubbing shoulders with these characters.
So do you think there would be, if they decided, like internationally, MMA, right, from now on, we want ex-fighters, coaches, etc., to become judges, to judge fights, to get the best, get the scores as good as we can get and as accurate as we can get them. Do you think there would be a large amount of fighters and coaches who would like to do it?
Oh, come on, there's loads of former fighters. And when you retire from fighting, you've got to find other aspects that you want to go into. Well, not all the time. Some people, it depends how wealthy you become from it. Some people not have to choose to do nothing more. But for me, I luckily, and I'm glad I went into coaching because it took over from fight career is a really hard thing to replace. It's a real big buzz. It's a real big drive and direction in your life. And so for me, coaching definitely fulfilled that spot. And certainly opens up an opportunity for these fighters to do. I think there'll be loads of fighters. There wouldn't be short on having people that would be right for that job. I think that would be a really good call. But look, this sport's really highly regulated in terms of, drug taking and making sure their weight cuts are done right now and done for safety. Oh man, come on, let's get this judging situation sorted too. It shouldn't be that hard. There's obviously some kind of issue with, who's in the know with that side of things, I'm guessing. And there's people who are doing it and they're not moving from that position.
Well, I am obviously over the last couple, I think what I wonder is whether these judges fully understand all the rules and the rule changes and this type of thing. Because how often over the last few years, say, for instance, have we seen cards and scores which don't make any sense?
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. I, for the life of me, can't really make much sense of that being a split decision with the down tail. I take in, what you say about him being against the cage, but to me and to everyone who I saw on social media and people I speak to, all said the same. It was clearly tail. Most people I spoke to had it at 30-27.
Yeah, I mean, I was grabbing at short straws to try and come up with an explanation on why judges would have done it as a split decision. I'm as baffled as you are, and as frustrated as well, because I do find it frustrating.
He not only scored a round, one of them scored it for Gastelum. They scored it 30-27 to Gastelum.
Yeah.
So it's like,
how did you come up with that? I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird one, that one.
Yeah.
So, main event of the evening was the BMF Championship.
Yeah.
Which is, what do you think of that as a traditional MMA fighter?
I don't want them to go down a route where it makes it all a little bit less serious. I think it's a fun thing to do, as maybe a one-off thing. But it opens it up. Then is it going to happen in every weight division? And then I don't know. I don't think it's a good thing to make a habit of. This one-off type of thing. Okay, this is great. The sport is entertainment after all, but let's not make it a joke either. So I'm a fan of it in terms that it got this fight the attention that that it deserved. But I just hope they don't go into a habit of creating a secondary type belt to go for within the UFC. I think the UFC belt in each of those weight divisions should be the end all and be all of what they're aiming for. And to put up these other type of belts is a bit,
it's a bit WWE.
It becomes less serious to me. And I don't want to that route.
Sorry. The thing is in boxing, the reason all the belts don't mean as much is because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got one belt for each weight class, that's the very top of the tree. That's the pinnacle of your division.
Yes.
So that's what you're aiming for. If you start bringing in these other titles, I think it dilutes it down and it makes it less important.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
But here we are. We've got it. And I'm glad we had it purely to see these two fight.
Yeah.
We had number 3 ranked George Masvidal versus number 7 ranked Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
And a very interesting fight. So let's talk about the fight before we talk about the ending.
Yeah.
What did you think of this one?
Yeah, I was super excited, as we all were, about this fight. When people were asking me my thoughts on how I thought it was going to play out, my money was on Nate, and my reasons were, and my forecast for how the fight was going to go was this: Masvidal to be explosive and accurate, and in the first 2 to 3 rounds, and look at the way that first round went. I mean, he really was explosive, and Nate is a little bit of a slow starter. Nate's a real marathon runner in terms of MMA, so 5 rounds is always going to be where you're going to see him at his best. And in that first round, I knew was going to be dangerous for him. I think Conor McGregor put him on his ass, didn't he, in the first round as well? But he's so durable, so fit, that you just always have the hopes that he's just going to endure this and come on strong in those championship rounds. To me, he was never going to beat Masvidal in 3-round fight. But I knew this was the 5, and I was so excited. So yeah, he got knocked down. He got cut really early, and I was perhaps we all was a little bit stunned how overwhelmingly dominant he was. I knew it was going to go in his favour regardless of first and second round, but perhaps not as convincing as he was. It was like, wow, is Nate going to get put out of there early? But Nate endured it. But Masvidal's kicks as well. I mean, they were precision. They were with everything that he had behind it, super sharp, super precise. I don't know whether I'm more impressed with the striking ability of Masvidal and his power and crispness and precision, or the fact that Nate Diaz just took it all.
Yeah. I mean, I got to say, about halfway through the first round, I thought you thought he was going to finish him, and I was racking my brain as I'm watching it, thinking, has Nate Diaz ever been finished in the first round? Have I seen any? And I was trying to rack my brain to see if because I could never remember anyone dominating him like that, and like not just dominating him by clipping him, like put him on his ass. And but I tell you one thing, do you know what I thought looked more brutal than any other shots he took to the head and face, and even the one that cut him was the body shots.
Yeah.
In slow motion, the couple of those kicks and punches to the rib area and the liver. They looked brutal.
Yeah, there was everything beyond that. Were technically very, very correct style punches and with a lot of velocity behind them. Really good. I mean, Masvidal's looking better and better, isn't he? He's looking really like legit up there. But he's in all the divisions are kind of stacked, I guess you would say, but he's in a really stacked division. So it's going to be great fights that he's going to be in. Who they're going to put him up against, God only knows, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good. But, you know, the second round, you know, so each round that went by, it becomes, you know, very slightly less dominant. In that first round, he was a lot of knockdown. It looked really like, was he going to get through it? Second round, Nate was losing again. And, you know, very, very similar to first, but not quite, you know, it never looked like, oh, you know, is Nate going to survive? I felt like Nate was always hanging in there quite well. And same for the third round, really. I just noticed that Masvidal's pace was just like dripping off a little bit. Now, whether he was just trying to be conservative for those 5 rounds, which I suspect maybe what he was, it wasn't a case of that he was getting tired. I think he was putting things in reserve because he knows where Nate is strong. And, you know, if I was going to be forced to predict what would have happened if it did happen, the 4th and 5th, I think Masvidal would have still perhaps won those rounds, but less convincingly. And I think Nate would have had his moments. And what I really wanted to see was how Masvidal would have handled having it put on him. Because I think there would have been moments in the 4th and 5th round where it was going to be put on him. You know, how would have he held up? But I think it would have made that was really what was going to be the entertaining part of the fight, was round 4 and 5. And it's such a shame that they never got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed briefly off air before we started that, you know, exactly that. Diaz was waiting for not waiting, but that's probably the wrong, you know, terminology. He's strongest. He comes into his own in those 4th and 5th rounds.
Yeah.
But Masvidal knew that as well. But equally, Nate Diaz knew, like everyone did, that he was 3 rounds down.
Yes.
So he would have had to have come out swinging, and he'd have had to try and finish Masvidal to win the fight.
Yes.
Now, I got to say, I thought Masvidal was incredible. I just thought he was super dominant. You're right, with each round, he was slightly less dominant, but still won the rounds comfortably. The one thing, so the fight gets stopped as the doctor waves it off at the end of round 3, between rounds 3 and 4, because the cut which Nate had on his eyebrow, I'm assuming that was the one, but he had one huge one on his eyebrow and one just under his eye, which made almost like a full circle. But one thing which I noticed in round 3 was Diaz was constantly wiping blood out of his eye.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, because I knew the result, I knew how the fight had finished when I was watching it.
Right.
Because my friend had texted me, which is always really annoying. But there we go. And so I watched it knowing that people were a bit annoyed and a bit pissed
Yeah.
off because it had been stopped the way it had.
Yeah.
And then I was looking at it, knowing that, and I was thinking, well, I can kind of see why they stopped it, because he's wiping the blood out of his eye, which is, he's like, Masvidal wasn't attacking him while he was doing it, but he was focused on like wiping the blood out of his eye rather than,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't want to say I'm always disagreeing with you, but
I like it. It's good.
He wasn't wiping his eye when he was under a barrage of strikes or anything. So it wasn't troubling him when the pressure was on. He was out of range, and he would give it a wipe to clear it. So to me, that showed that he was in control of any of that blood running down. It wasn't running down constantly where when Masvidal was coming in, he was trying to wipe it while the heat was on. He never looked like he was blinded in any way. Masvidal was just landing those strikes because he's damn good and damn explosive and tenacious and confident. That's why the strikes were landing. They was not landing anymore, and in fact, they was landing less as the rounds go on, like we spoke about. Had there been a real issue there regards his vision, he would have been getting lumped up even more. But that just wasn't the case. And it was a nasty cut, but we've seen Nate with worse cuts than that where the fight was carrying on. I just should let it carry on in my eyes. So,
absolutely.
I know they're there to protect the fight, and I'm all for fighter safety. But, he's got a lot of scar tissue up there. This is not going to be consequential to any of his other fights in terms of his health. They could have let that carry on, in my personal mind. And maybe it's just because I'm a fan. I wanted to see that round 4 and 5 because I was really enjoying the fight. But like I say, there's a little bit of inconsistency there. There's been much worse cuts where the fights have been carrying on, and to stop it on such a great fight and such a good matchup was a little bit of a shame for me.
Yeah, it was an anticlimax, and like I'd have understood more if round 3 had gone like round 1, where he was being dominated and he had been knocked on his ass a couple of times. Then okay, I can kind of understand that a bit more. But he was fine. He was coming into the fight more. He was completely aware of everything. He wasn't sort of groggy or drowsy. He wasn't wobbly. He was completely fine within himself. He was saying he was fine.
Yeah.
And he was coming into the fight.
Yeah.
Now, and like you said, and they mentioned on the broadcast, is he's got a lot of scar tissue around that eye.
Yeah.
Which means if he gets, that's why he always bleeds from that area.
Yeah.
And equally, when you compare it to, so I saw a picture today on Twitter of side by side Nate Diaz after he'd been patched up or waiting to be patched up, but had been cleaned, and Tyson Fury. Both next to each other from his last fight where he had that huge cut.
Yeah.
And Tyson Fury's cut is much, 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 much worse.
Yeah.
Much worse, much deeper, much nastier, and he's got a lot more damage to his face. Bruises and this and that. Now, you can't tell me that like a 12-round boxing match, and he fought a good portion of the 12 rounds with that cut.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that that's more dangerous. One was allowed to slide and one wasn't. And I just feel like with Diaz, there was, like you say, all for fighter safety and making sure we don't have anything tragic happen, etc., etc. But I felt like it was. I don't want to say that it felt like the doctor was almost wanting to be the center of attention.
Yeah.
But I felt like the doctor wanted to be the center of attention.
I said exactly the same thing. Like my son was sat with me. He's like, "Oh, why is this happening?" I'm like, "Well, the doctor is his time to shine." He gave some kind of importance to be there, but it probably wasn't the case. Let's not presume doctors are there just to have their moment of fame to stop this fight. But he obviously stopped it because he felt that he should. But one doctor over another, another doctor probably wouldn't have stopped it. And this goes down to the judging again. There's such a big inconsistency, and it's really frustrating. But let's look at a positive spin on this. The fight was stopped by Doctor. Even Masvidal, you see him put his arms up like, why has it been stopped? He didn't want it to stop. He really was. I think he was enjoying the fight, And I think he wanted to see what he has to offer for the round 4 and 5. I think he was wanting to stop Diaz, and that would have really been something from Masvidal. I think he really wanted to put him away.
What a statement that would be as well.
Yeah, it would have been. But the positive aspects for it is that this is potentially going to happen again, and I think it should.
Yeah, so we got a couple of questions about that, so we'll get on to them now.
Yeah.
I've got just to finish off on that. It was disappointing to end a really fun show and a really entertaining show in that way.
Yeah.
To be like a doctor stoppage, and we have seen so many worse cuts and injuries in MMA, and fights continue. We've seen fighters continue, break a hand in round 1 and still be fighting in round 3.
Yeah.
And not being able to defend themselves on one side of their upper body. But,
yeah.
But Jorge Masvidal, beast, and looks really dominant, impressive.
Yeah.
And I think I said to you before we started recording, compared to where he was about a year to 18 months ago, looks like a different fighter. Looks like an absolute machine.
Yeah, it's like everything's suddenly really come together for him. And I'm glad, because he's exciting to watch. He's good for the sport. He's got this real tough, brash personality.
Yeah.
And that's just nothing but good for the sport. He's really good. He conducted himself really well. He was absolutely respectful of the warriorship from Nate, and they're both complementary of each other. But they still wanted to get their fight down at the end of the day, and they will do it again. I really believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to finish off, we'll have a few questions which have been sent in. You can send questions for Danny each month by tweeting at ACEcast_nation. Use the hashtag AceNationArmy, or you can send them to facebook.com/ACEcastNation, or email acenetworkcontact@gmail.com. So, first question was, if you were Dana White, who would you put Darren Till against next?
Right, I would put him against Whittaker.
Ooh, nice fight.
That'd be a good one. It could, legitimize Whittaker again, and likewise, if Till pulls that kind of win off, it puts him right up there in that new weight division that he's stepping up into. And I'd like to see that. Yeah,
I think Darren Till looked much more comfortable at going up a weight.
Yeah, and he still looked bigger at weight. Till surprised me, actually. He said immediately after that fight how that I know I'm not going to be as strong as the guys in this division. I don't see that. He was a lot bigger than Gastelum in there. I don't think strength was an issue against Gastelum at all. I think he was the bigger, stronger man. I think he looked good at weight. I looked better at that weight. I know the weight cut was really killing him in that other weight division. And so, going up a weight is also going to add to his longevity in the sport if he wants it. I think this is much healthier for him.
Yeah, did Joe Rogan say that he walked around at about 200 pounds and he cut to 165 previously?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I mean,
that's a lot.
That's pretty serious, weight cutting right there. Yeah, it can't be enjoyable to do.
No, indeed not.
Yeah.
Next up was with guys like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua mentioned in MMA fights recently, is there a boxer who you think could make the jump to MMA, or do you think it's too difficult with all the extra skills and disciplines?
I think as long as they're young enough to still have time to accumulate the skills needed to be an all-round fighter, I think that's always possible with these combat sports. It's just having education. They obviously know what it takes to get to the highest of the boxing level, so they would address, likewise, you would think, what needed to be done regards their wrestling and their grappling skills. Obviously, it's all about strategy, right? They're going to be predominantly boxers, so they need to know how to protect themselves against those leg kicks first, because I know that's what other decent strikers will be targeting, that foot position. So as long as they can adjust for the new environment, there's no reason why they couldn't do. But going there as just boxers, well, they're never going to get out of one round against any of the fighters. Look at that Mayweather and Conor McGregor matchup. Had that been MMA, Mayweather
Conor
ain't
would
getting out one.
destroyed him.
Yeah, he ain't getting out of one round. Simple as that. As a pure boxer, it's just not going to happen. We all know that. But in terms of having time to prep them up, and as long as they give them some form of scale to bring their level up in that new field, yeah, they could do it in a few years. Why not? And who would I pick for? I'd say let's put Canelo in there. I think he could have.
Nice.
He's a smart man. He's quite big at his weight, so he obviously knows how to do the weight cuts on etc. I think someone like him, if he addressed it for a good 2 years, he could move himself up the ranks and become a legit force. Why not? I'd like to see that, but I can't see a boxer doing it. For one, there's too much money in the sport of boxing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it would be putting their first love sport too much to the test, for which would end up with disappointment because they're never going to beat an MMAist unless they become an MMAist themselves.
Yeah.
They would only have to learn anti-wrestling skills, adapt their stance to deal with the kicks, and learn to scramble off the back. They don't have to become a submission expert. They need to just learn to steer the MMA to where they're strong, which is on the feet with their hands. Not easy to do when there's so many aspects that can take you out of that boxing realm. But if they can adapt their game within a 2-year period, I think they could become legit and become a force to be reckoned with. But I just don't think it's going to happen.
No, be nice to see, but yeah,
Yes.
You're right. I don't think it would happen. Although you mentioned the money in boxing, I did a show with Paddy Pimblett a couple of weeks back.
Yes.
And he had a little, I wouldn't say a rant, but he had some things to say about the money in boxing and the money in MMA, and that obviously there's a massive difference.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to learn that the UFC, if you've got a fight camp, they only fly out one member of your team.
That's right.
I think that is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Because you have to have your team out there with you.
Yes.
To do your fight and whatnot.
Yeah.
For a company that size, which makes that much money, to not pay for your team to come with you, I think is extraordinary. And I was shocked.
Yeah. I'm saying I'm absolutely shocked with it. And to give you an example of perhaps what people don't realise, I corner for Linton predominantly for most of his fights. Not every one of his fights. Sometimes it don't suit regards to the calendar, and I can't make it for whatever reason. But I always try to be there for him as much as I can. And he predominantly fights stateside. Pretty much stays out there training full time now. So when he wants me to go out there and corner, he has his cornerman from the camp that he predominantly trains at. And when he drafts me in, he's having to pay for my flight to get all of that out of his phone fight purse. I think that's wrong. I mean, come on, surely his promotions make enough money to be able to pay for 2 coaches to be out there. But yeah, they only pay for 1.
Shocking. I wish. That's my one wish actually for MMA going forward, is that the fighters get the money that they deserve.
Yeah.
For putting their life and their health on the line.
Yeah.
Because not every fighter is Conor McGregor and these big names. But the guys on the lower end of the card in the UFC and the Cage Warriors and wherever, they deserve to get paid decently.
Yeah.
So they're putting their health on the line. They want to make a living of it. So make a living of it by paying them appropriately.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I got distracted with a tangent there. So just the last couple of questions, or last one, and then I've got one for you, which I just thought of as we were doing the show. Would you run back Diaz and Masvidal, or would you do Diaz versus Conor 3, assuming Conor wins his return fight in probably January?
No, I'd run the Masvidal fight again because I feel like that's unfinished. Yeah, with what happened with the doctor stoppage, that's unfinished, and they will both want it as well. It's not like going to be put in question that one of them's going to turn it down. They will both want that again.
And the thing, absolutely. And the thing is as well, is what you can do is say Masvidal wins, or Diaz wins, whoever, and Conor beats whoever he fights in January, say Cerrone, and he beats him convincingly. Conor's going to want the winner of Diaz and Masvidal.
Yeah.
I got to say, I think Masvidal will brutalize him, but that's another thing. Conor would want the winner. Conor would want, he's already said quite publicly he wants that belt because he sees himself as the baddest. So the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, so to run it that way and get Diaz and Masvidal to do it again, whoever becomes the winner of that, and let's surmise that Conor McGregor wins his return fight, then you've got a great little storyline there for a fight off. That'd be fantastic. Yeah, let's get that on, because if Diaz does win, then you've got kind of a two-sided affair for that belt, and the fact that they get their third and final fight to who's the best. That kind of would, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, Conor said he wants 3 fights in 2020. He wants his return fight with, I think it was Cerrone or Pettis, or not Pettis, Poirier. He wants Diaz 3, or probably the winner of Diaz Masvidal, and then finish the year by having a rematch with Khabib.
Yeah.
Now, if it was any other fighter in the planet, I would say he's probably biting off more than he can chew. After after years of not doing a lot.
Yeah.
But if anyone was going to go and do that and win all 3 fights, it would probably be him. What a year! What a year that would be.
Yeah. He was very underrated, and everyone thought that each fight that he would take was going to be the demise of him. I mean, he did end up reaching his limit and getting his losses, but he was investing his time and interest into other sports such as the boxing. But if he starts getting sort of runs and wins, and he does adapt and change and advance his game and tries to grow as an MMS, which you would hope that he would be doing, you can never write this guy off. If he starts getting back his timing and precision, the power's already there. He could start putting people away really quickly again. So there's only one way to find out, and that's to get it done. Let's get the fights on. Let's see what he's got.
Yeah, I would like to see sometime in the next year or two a fully focused and fit Conor McGregor versus Khabib, because I do feel that the Khabib fight, he wasn't focused, he wasn't himself, and he was so worried about Khabib's wrestling. But I felt like he was pissed in the run up to it as well. I just feel like he didn't take it seriously at all.
It's hard to know, isn't it? His outside life is always seems to be full of turmoil, and something's always going on that's putting him in the headlines for negative things. That situation in the bar, ain't doing his character any good. And,
no,
it's not helping regards to people being fans of him. There's other issues in his private life as well that sort of have been leaking out. So as long as he's got those things sorted, we'll have a fully focused Conor McGregor, and a fully focused Conor McGregor is someone that you can never write off. If he says he's going to do something, it may well happen, because in the past he's said it and it happened the way he said it was going to happen. So maybe that'll happen again.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys in and out of the cage that his box office. You just got to watch it, because it's entertaining. It's a car crash, or it's
He's been a big draw. He took MMA to another stage of level of recognition and attention. I think he's helped the fighters get paid more. He's done a lot of good things for the sport. Love him or hate him, I've always been a fan of him. I think he's been great for the sport. He's helped it grow that little bit more. It doesn't carry quite the same clout as he did, because he obviously was on an incredible unbeaten streak, beating and devastating incredible level guys. He ended the reign. What's the Brazilian's name? Aldo. He held his 10-year. He put to bed his 10-year reign. I mean, that's impressive right there. He's never looked the same since he's knocked his.
In a minute.
Yeah, and he literally, and to predict the combination as well, which I think was down to a little bit of, just coincidence, but it made it look even more quirky what this kid says happens. And if he says it's going to happen, just to say it ain't gonna. So let's see what happens next year.
Yeah, get him back in the cage.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right then. So that's us, guys. Danny, thank you for joining me, mate. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And you guys can check out Danny's MMA Academy, which is the BST Academy. bstacademy.co.uk. You can check out this show and all our other shows, our previous show, the interview I did with Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, and all our various other shows at youtube.com/AcePodcastNation, as well as the audio versions at iHeartRadio, Apple Pods, etc. And check us out on social media as well. Guys, thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you for UFC 245 in about a month's time. Cheers, guys.